When you assess how insane America is becoming right now, with its policies and its politicians and its movies and its TV shows and who's the criminal and who's the victim, you have to ask yourself, how can we be this crazy? I'm going to give you the answer. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice.
Welcome to the program, friend. Years ago when I was in Bible college, one of our beloved teachers said to us, if it's bad, blame yourself. If it's very bad, blame the devil. If it's very, very bad, blame God. And at the time, it jarred me. What do you mean, blame God? Now I understand. How could things be getting this insane in our culture? Where you have a man running for governor for California as a Republican who claims he is a woman. This is insanity. This is, it's unthinkable. It's unspeakable. How could we have gotten this crazy? I'm going to give you the answer in today's program, and I hope that you'll stay with me right to the end. And I'm going to use the scriptures, the Bible, to explain it. The answer in a phrase is, we're being handed over. We are being handed over. Let's turn to the scriptures. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and shrewd in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and valiant men in mixing strong drink, who acquit the guilty for a bribe and deprive the innocent of his rights. The look on their faces testifies against them. They parade their sin like Sodom, and they do not hide it. Woe to them. They have brought disaster upon themselves. And then finally this, I charge you in the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who is the judge of the living and the dead, or who is to judge the living and the dead. And by his appearing and his kingdom, preach the word. Be urgent in season and out of season. Convince, rebuke, and exhort. Be unfailing in patience and in teaching. For the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but having itching ears, they will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own likings or their own desires, and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander into myths. That is where we are. America has crossed into uncharted ethical and political waters. Moreover, most of Europe is swimming blindly through a pea soup of insanity. There's no place in our individual or shared histories between America and Europe where we can look back and say, oh, this happened before. Yeah, this is how Patrick Henry and George Washington fought back, or this is how Queen Elizabeth or Queen Victoria or Winston Churchill would handle this. No. But worse than that, someone has to reach back to the worst nations of all heathen history to find illustrations or examples that even remotely resemble where we are today. It's arguable that due to the speed and strength of centralized power over communications and the speed at which such power can establish a new normal and a new orthodoxy of right and wrong, it's possible that the very speed of communications and change is affecting the human race in a way that is unequal to anything that's happened in the past. And there's no equal in this chasm of evil into which we are falling. There's no equal to this very chasm if you look in human history. So however dark the pagan, sinister lights of the past might be, they do cast an eerie shadow over our path. We can know the future because we can see the past. We can predict where we're headed because we can see from the cesspool that we've come. Now, think about this. In his letter to the Romans, Paul the Apostle wrote about ethical rebels. Strident pagans of the lowest order who knowingly rebelled against the maker of heaven and earth. They were arrogant monsters of iniquity, and they knew God. At least they used to. They knew his law, and yet they made repeated decisions to defy God and to break his laws. In the next break, or in the next section of this TV show, I'm going to read to you what Paul said about these people, and it's probably going to make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. Stay with me. We are being handed over. Welcome back, friend. We've seen a record of the judgment of God in the scriptures. We've seen the judgment of God on America. I'm going to talk about that in our next program. But before the sword, famine, and plague, which are the three main venues by which God judges a people, before the sword, famine, and plague fall from the outside upon a people, there's a different judgment that's poured on them, and this one is more internal. It's a judgment of their minds, a judgment of their souls. It's like God gives them over to the corruption of their thoughts, thoughts so malign that it takes away someone's ethical and familial sense of duty. It removes common decency. It removes common honor. And what Paul called this is being handed over. Not handed over to a foreign power. That did come later for the Jews. Or to the worst of violence and plagues and famines. That also came earlier as well, rather. But rather, people were handed over to the violence of the soul. Their minds were ravaged and plagued by the fruit of their evils. And then that fruit in their head, in their brains, in their souls, the fruit went to seed, growing darker and more plentiful crops of abominations. They were literally handed over to a famine of decency and kindness, of mercy, faith, trust. Their very ability to think and perceive with light was taken from them. And as Paul said, their foolish hearts were darkened. They craved debauchery and they feasted on it until they vomited the refuse they ingested. And the very land on which they lived, the Bible says, vomited them out. Paul makes it clear this handing over of evildoers to the fruits of their own ways was a judgment of God. Friends, I'm telling you, we are being handed over. Now, when I read what I'm about to read, I want you to note the progression of this disease of the mind. Note that God himself hands them over to their own evil thoughts and their vile imaginations. And note why he does it. Okay, ready? Here's the passage. It's Romans chapter 1. The wrath of God is indeed being revealed from heaven against every impiety and wickedness of those who suppress the truth by their wickedness. For what can be known about God is evident to them because God made it evident to them. Ever since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes of eternal power and divinity have been able to be understood and perceived in what he has made. As a result, they have no excuse. For although they knew God, they did not accord him glory as God or give him thanks. Instead, they became vain in their reasoning, and their senseless minds were darkened. While claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for the likeness of an image of mortal man, or of birds, or of four-legged animals, or snakes. Now listen to this, friends. Here it comes. Therefore, God handed them over. Therefore, God handed them over. Think of America. Therefore, God handed them over to impurity through the lusts of their hearts, for the mutual degradation of their bodies. Think of this poor soul in California running for governor. Think of this health expert, so-called, this man from Pennsylvania who now pretends to be a woman and has given himself a woman's name. Think of the so-called abomination of homosexual marriage. God handed them over for the mutual degradation of their bodies. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and revered and worshiped the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Therefore, here comes the next one. God handed them over to degrading passions. Their females exchanged natural relations for unnatural. And the males likewise gave up natural relations with females and burned with lust for one another. Males did shameful things with males and thus received in their own persons the due penalty for their perversity. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God handed them over to their undiscerning mind to do what is improper. That's the third handed over. They are filled with every form of wickedness, evil, greed, and malice, full of envy, murder, rivalry, treachery, and spite. They are gossips and scandalmongers, and they hate God. They are insolent, haughty, boastful, ingenious in their wickedness, and rebellious toward their parents. They are senseless, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Although they know the just decree of God, that all who practice such things deserve death, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. Sounds to me an awful lot like where we are in America today. We are being handed over. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the program, friend. The passage I just read to you from Romans chapter 1 pronounced a dreadful judgment. Evildoers love their sin so much that God hands them over. And consider those today who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Think of Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Consider those who are vain in their reasoning. Think the Hollywood and news media elite. Consider those whose senseless minds are darkened. Think of the masterminds behind Biden's executive order celebrating transgenderism. Think of Nancy Pelosi. Or consider those who claim to be wise but have become fools. Think of our Supreme Court striking down the laws of all 50 states to create child killing, striking down the laws of all 50 states to create the folly of so-called homosexual marriage out of thin air. Consider all of these elite in politics and news and art and entertainment and education and business who exchange the truth of God for a lie. They're all being handed over by God to an undiscerning mind. They have become like brute beasts, trying to outdo each other in feats of debauchery and indecency. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're geniuses. But sadly, they are ingenious in their wickedness. I mean, look at how they fostered the lie for 3 years that President Trump colluded with the Russians. It was all a lie. How could they do it? How could they keep doing it? They knew it was a lie because they have no shame. Why? Because they're filled, as Paul just wrote, they're filled with every form of wickedness, evil, greed, malice, full of envy, murder, rivalry, treachery, spite. They're gossips, they're scandalmongers, they love scandal, they hate God. Make no mistake, these enemies of truth who suppress the truth in ungodliness, they are all of these things: senseless, faithless, heartless, ruthless. and they have been handed over to an undiscerning mind. Now, one translation translates undiscerning mind as a base mind. The New King James Version translated debased mind. The Douay Rheims translates it reprobate sense. The Geneva Bible, the King James Bible, translated reprobate mind. America is being led by reprobates into a swamp of evil that has no historic rival. I mean, this is not a prediction. This is a statement of fact based on the evidence. I mean, think about it. What I'm about to tell you is a list. This is no particular order, okay? A list of the insanity that we are doing right now. And it gets more bizarre and debauched every day. I mean, it's like a kaleidoscope of evil that is changing so quickly because of the shattered glass that they're dumping in it, the shattered remains of our past. So what I'm about to tell you could be passé in another 6 or 12 months. That which is unthinkable and unspeakable a generation ago is considered normal and good. So, I mean, think about it. What's unthinkable and unspeakable today that's going to be normal and good in another generation? So, that said, think about these elite who have been handed over to a reprobate mind are leading America into a hell on earth. Riots in our major cities are called peaceful protests, the summer of love. The national media outlets barely cover these protests because it doesn't fit into their narrative that white America and white American men are America's biggest threat. Politicians and celebrities call for defunding the police while they simultaneously call for our guns to be confiscated so we can't defend ourselves. And then those elite people have armed guards to protect themselves. I've got to take a break. I'll be right back with more of the proof that we have been handed over to a reprobate mind. Don't go away. Welcome back, friend. I'm going through a list, ideas, things that show that we've been handed over to debased thinking, a debased mind. If I can continue. And again, this is in no particular order. But think about the two-tier system of justice that has emerged. Where Trump supporters who broke the law at our nation's capital on January 6th, they're hounded, hunted, hammered in court, while Black Lives Matter and Antifa thugs who burn and loot and maim are ignored. They're not usually prosecuted. They're barely given a slap on the wrist. Our southern border has literally been overrun by millions of illegal immigrants. The reprobates in D.C., some people call them politicians, are striving to institute new voter laws, right, that will ensure that voter fraud goes undetected and unpunished. The unholy trinity of big tech, Google, Facebook, Twitter, has silenced the voices of Christian ethics and political conservatism, starting with President Trump himself, literally banning President Trump from Twitter and from YouTube, stating that these voices violate community guidelines. What community guidelines? That you have to be a reprobate, godless enemy of all that is good to have a show? Multiple Christian and conservative online outlets have been effectively silenced because they dared to question the government's response to COVID. Think of the cancel culture. They're trying to break the back and the bank of anyone who criticizes or opposes the new godless orthodoxy. They're trying to cancel TV shows, radio shows, online talk shows that oppose the new regime of evil. And mainstream media has become a lying tool of the state. And the godless in entertainment keep lionizing perverts and attacking conservatives and Christians of every ilk. And then in the name of saving the planet, bona fide haters of humans, lying Malthusian prophets of doom, they are poised to cripple much of our economy, to destroy millions of jobs by hamstringing our energy sources. And once again, making us dependent on foreign oil, oftentimes pumped out by ideological and political adversaries. Think of the various state governors, regulators, federal agencies that are pressuring people and sometimes blackmailing people into getting COVID vaccines. Even though there's a growing amount of data out there that shows there's some serious health dangers associated with these vaccines. as well as the fact that some of them have been developed in part with cells of aborted babies. If anyone in science or political activism questions or challenges any aspect of COVID's origin, its spread, its danger, multiple treatments, they are ostracized, and when possible, they are silenced. Millions of people have lost their jobs. Hundreds of thousands are losing their homes because of these draconian shutdowns in various cities. Civil liberties, constitutional rights are being trampled underfoot. And now people are requiring gender-sensitive pronouns. Do you want to be called a man, a woman, he, she, it, you? The U.S. military is now offering any soldiers, let's take one more minute. The U.S. military is offering any new soldiers that want to sign up to serve, they can have a sex change surgery paid for by U.S. tax dollars. And the latest crowning evil in this kingdom of lies and debauchery is children are being told that they can choose their gender. They can choose their gender. They can identify as a man or a woman or maybe neither. And genital mutilation is the outcome of any such process or surgery for a child or an adult. This is not science. A man is a man, a woman is a woman, no matter what parts of their body they cut off or what they try to add. Okay, and to claim otherwise is the fruit of a reprobate mind. Now look, I'm giving you this list. It's not comprehensive, but you know how bad things are. So you're watching the news and you're saying, how can this be? It's because God has handed us over. It's a judgment. I'll talk more about this on the next show. God bless you. Go to our website,